Now, I have over a dozen quotes from Archbishop Lefebvre referring to the Catholic Church as the conciliar church. What's interesting to note, I'm just going to give you two quotes, is that he actually claimed that after the Second Vatican Council, the Roman Catholic Church effectively defected. That is, that the visible social unit is no longer the Roman Catholic Church, that the Roman Catholic Church morphed into what he called a conciliar church, which is no longer the Catholic Church. Let's listen to what Lefebvre says in his own words. And this comes from society websites. Quote, obviously, we are against the conciliar church, which is virtually schismatic, even if they deny it. In practice, it is a church excommunicated because it is a modernist church. Listen carefully. That is no longer the Catholic Church. That is the conciliar church with all its unpleasant consequences. He says that the Roman Catholic Church is no longer the Catholic Church. This is a denial of the doctrine of indefectibility and apostolicity and everything else associated with the church, because the visible institution, as I've said, contains the promises in which the gates of hell will never prevail. But when Lefebvre says it's no longer the Catholic Church, he's explicitly stating that the Church of Rome, headed by Paul VI and John Paul II, is no longer the Catholic Church. Okay, here's another quote. It is not we who are in schism, but the conciliar church. Which church are we talking about? Are we talking about the Catholic Church or another church, a counter church, a counterfeit of the church? Now, I think sincerely we're talking about a counterfeit version of the church and not the Catholic Church. It does not teach any longer the Catholic faith, but something else. He's talking about now the Church of Rome, right? It leads the church into something else other than the Catholic Church. It is no longer the Catholic Church, end quote. Those are two quotes from Archbishop Lefebvre saying that the Roman Catholic Church, that church that the world knows is Catholic, that's headed by a pope, that's headed by a bishop, that is the Church of Rome and all of the churches united to her legally, east and west, in one juridical body, is no longer the Catholic Church. It was the Catholic Church under Pius XII, but it's no longer the Catholic Church under Paul VI and John Paul II. So in these words, Archbishop Lefebvre is practically saying that the church defected, that it morphed into something else. He hangs himself. He hangs himself by saying that it is no longer the Catholic Church. This is different than saying that the Catholic Church has been infiltrated by bad actors, right? By communists, by Freemasons, infected with modernist spirit, whatever you want to say. Rather, he's actually saying the institution itself is no longer the Catholic Church. And, he supposedly, this is astute churchman and theologian. He knew what he was saying. And so I think it's fair to say and to conclude from his own words that he believed that the church was defectible.
That's pretty straightforward. So, John, if the Catholic Church defected, then, right, where did the marks of the church go, right? One, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. Where did they go?
Great question, right? I mean, Archbishop Lefebvre now faces a dilemma here because he has to know that the marks are perpetual. And this is, again, where his heretical ecclesiology comes to the rescue, right?
Yep.
Because the Roman Catholic Church ceased to exist as Christ founded it, the marks had to go somewhere else. Well, guess what Lefebvre says? He says the marks went to the Society of St. Pius X. This is totally heretical. Okay, and I'll quote him. This was from a quote in his interview he did with Fidelity magazine in the July-August issue of 1989. Quote, we, the Society of St. Pius X, truly represent the Catholic Church such as it was before, because we are continuing what it always did. It is we who have the marks of the visible church. One, holy, Catholic, and apostolic. That's what makes the church visible.
Wow.
Guys, this is blatantly and explicitly heretical. Only the Roman Catholic Church has the marks and the attributes. There is no other institution that has them. And so to say that the Roman Catholic Church lost its marks, that they somehow transferred to the SSPX is heretical. It's a denial of the Catholic understanding of the Nicene and the Apostles' Creed, that the one holy Catholic Apostolic Church applies to the Church of Rome and those churches legally united to it. And it's just like I said, just like the Protestants use the Apostles' Creed in their churches, they have a heretical understanding Lefebvre also had a heretical understanding of the marks and the attributes, and ultimately it's based upon his faulty ecclesiology. You see, what Lefebvre thought, which is what the error is of the traditional movement today, is those who profess the true faith, right? We go to the old Mass, we reject Vatican II, the new Mass. We are the ones with the marks. That's not true. That's not what the marks mean. Again, the marks refer to the juridical body, the visible social unit, which is it's distinct from the members. It is not with those who profess the true faith, and that is a heresy.
Yeah, Lefebvre's words here go against 2,000 years of tradition, which is ironic. That does lead me to ask you, John, about jurisdiction. So, if the church doesn't contain these marks, where is jurisdiction in the church?
Again, it's a dilemma, right? Because the Society of St. Pius X is not part of the Roman Catholic Church, which Lefebvre would call the former Roman Catholic Church, because they're not part of the juridical body in which jurisdiction exists, and only within the juridical body, because it's not part of that visible social unit. Where do they get their jurisdiction from? Well, the answer is they don't. They don't have any jurisdiction. I'm not talking about the delegated faculties now under Francis, but they do not have episcopal jurisdiction. But guess what Lefebvre's solution to this dilemma was? Again, it's blatantly heretical. He actually said that the society bishops get their jurisdiction from the people, from the people. This has been condemned throughout the church history as a heresy. And again, don't take my words for it. I'm going to quote Archbishop Lefebvre on this, where he wrote a letter to Father Rifan on February 20th of 1991, when he was he was contemplating the successor to Bishop Castro de Meyer. And he wrote a letter about that. And what he says is this, he says, quote, this is Lefebvre, quote, "There is no other basis for jurisdiction than that which comes from the requests of the priest and the faithful to take care of souls." Think about that. There's no other basis in Lefebvre's mind for jurisdiction other than requests that come from the faithful, who have asked him to accept the episcopacy, so to give them true Catholic priests. This is absolutely astonishing. Thus, it is clear that the jurisdiction of the new bishop is not territorial, but personal. Again, I mean, this is heretical on a number of fronts. Number one, where does jurisdiction come from? It comes from the Pope, not the people. One could say it comes from Christ. There's a different way of looking at it, either Christ or the Pope, but it certainly doesn't come from the people. That is the heresy here. And then we can talk maybe a little bit about the nature of heresy, which he calls personal. What he really means is his bishops, because of the people conferring jurisdiction upon their clerics, they have a universal jurisdiction, right? They can exercise their ministry anywhere in the world without restraint, unlike any other bishop or priest, right? So it's quite incredible. He says this again. He says, quote, "Since the jurisdiction of the bishop is not territorial but personal," which isn't true, "it has as its source the duty of the faithful to save their souls. If a group of faithful in the diocese calls upon the bishop," one of their bishops, "and they want a priest, this group gives by this very fact authority to the bishop to watch over the transmission of the faith." So here Lefebvre says that it's the people who give the authority, that is the jurisdiction, to the bishop to determine who gets ordained. This is what he's saying. It's incredible.
I
Very similar to.
hadn't heard that one before. Wow.
It's in the February 20th, 1991 letter. Again, here's more in the same letter. Quote, "The jurisdictional authority of the bishop does not come from a Roman nomination, but from the necessity of the salvation of souls. The faithful must facilitate the exercise of his authority by a generous obedience," end quote. And Bishop Tissier says the same thing. He said, and I'll quote him, just one quote, "Inasmuch as you do not refuse from your priests the ministry which they have a right to exercise," no, they don't, "the jurisdiction that you in a certain way give them, the jurisdiction that you people give them, they will be able to be fruitfully exercised their ministry." So is this heresy? Well, let me quote from Archbishop Lefebvre's patron, St. Pius X. And let's see what he says. In his catechism in question 48, it says this: does the power possessed by the members of the hierarchy come from the people? No, the power possessed by the hierarchy does not come from the people, and it would be a heresy to say it did.